Over a new poll by CNN that was conducted nationally that shows the race between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump is exceedingly close, according to the article written by CNN. So, in the race for president between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, Harris's support has about 48% of the vote to Donald Trump's 47% of the vote. This is among likely voters nationwide, in a poll conducted by CNN, and a margin that suggests there is no clear leader in the race. 2% of voters say they plan to vote for the Libertarian candidate Chase Oliver, 1% for the Green Party nominee Jill Stein. Both Harris and Trump hold positive support from the majority of their backers. 72% of Trump supporters say their choice is more for him than against Harris, while 60% of Harris supporters say their choice is more for her than against Trump. Definitely a more anti-Trump sentiment among Democratic voters than anti-Harris among Republicans. That's a major shift in voters' attitudes towards the race compared to earlier this summer. In the last national CNN poll in July, shortly after President Joe Biden ended his campaign for president, Harris backers were evenly divided between affirmative support for her and those given by Trump's sentiment. So Kamala's support among her supporters actually went up. So as I said, the poll is 48% for Harris, 47% for Trump. It was conducted between September 19th and 22nd among a random sample of 2,074 registered voters drawn from a probability-based panel. So definitely a larger sample size, which is very good, and a plus or minus 3% margin of error. So absolutely a very close and tied race at this time. The latest poll finds Harris and Trump roughly even with independent likely voters, Harris at 45 to Trump's 41. With a gender gap that is centered among independents, independent women break for Harris 51 to Trump's 36, while independent men split 47 for Trump to 40 for Harris. The gender divide in the poll is also more concentrated among white voters, where white men break 58-35 in favor of Trump, white women split 50 to 47 in favor of Trump to Harris, actually. With very little gender divide among black and Latino voters, Harris is well ahead among likely voters younger than 30, 55 to 38 in favor of her, and black voters 79 to 16 in favor of Harris, and Latino 59 to 40 in favor of Harris over Trump as well. Only 2% of likely voters say they have not chosen a candidate to support yet, and another 12% have chosen one but say they could change their minds. This poll suggests that overall Harris has begun to build a more positive public image, outpacing Trump across several measures of how the public views her personally. Since becoming the Democratic presidential nominee, Harris's favorability rating has climbed to its highest level in CNN polling since just before Biden and hers inauguration, back in 2021. 46% favorable, 48% unfavorable, while Trump holds at 42% favorable, 55% unfavorable. Let's see. Also, Tim Walz's approval is 36 to 32. J.D. Vance is 30 to 42. A narrow majority of voters nationwide say Harris's temperament, 58%, and background life experience, 56%, all relate to her aligned with their presidency and going more on. There's a lot of other statistics in this poll that, in my opinion, aren't really too important that I want to get to, but mainly, I actually stray from the article a little bit. They say this is a good sign for Harris, that she's up by 1. I actually personally don't see that, and this is why. In the national polls right now of Trump versus Harris, do a quick refresh. Harris is at 49.3, Trump is at 47. She is up in the average by 2.3% according to the polls. This poll from CNN at +1 has a larger sample size and a 3-point margin of error. I would actually be a little bit concerned for Harris in this poll because, as I mentioned, in the United States, we elected our presidents by electoral college and not by popular vote. But depending on how big of a margin the popular vote is, that could give a potential sign at how the election is going. At this day in history, Joe Biden is at 6.9%, Hillary Clinton was at 3%. So Harris, even though she has been rising in the polls, her numbers have certainly been going up. Now they're starting to get a little bit more stagnant, but she definitely did go up a little bit, at least a few points, since the debate. Now we're starting to see Trump and her in a very close race that, in the most case, is within the margin of error. There are some polls that have it +4, +5, like NBC, CBS, Morning Consult. But in the Morning Consult's case, I question it because typically their polls do lean more towards the Democratic side. NBC and CBS, I think, less so have that issue than Morning Consult does. But the fact that this poll is only a 1-point race in the national race does, I think, if you're supporting Harris, give a little bit concern. Still, she's up by 1, so that's a good sign. But if on election day Harris is only leading Trump 1% nationally, that's very good news for Trump and very poor news for Harris. The good news for Harris, though, is this is the only poll since the NPR or PBS poll that has Harris up by 1. A lot of them have her somewhere up 2 to 5, 2 to 4. So if Harris is in that margin, she's in decent standing in the national vote. Not amazing, not terrible, in relatively good standing. But will it be enough to actually win her the election? That remains to be seen. Because as we check now the latest battlegrounds, where we refresh, Trump is now taking a lead in the average of battlegrounds at 0.2. Trump is up in Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia. Harris is up right now in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Nevada. Very, very narrowly. But if we assign these states, and to show you what I mean by this, Trump right now has 262. Harris, according to the averages, has about 276. This is where the map is right now, according to the polls. And this is assuming everything in the polls is 100% right, which I'm not trying to discredit the polls, but as 2016 showed and 2020 showed, the margins in the polls are not always correct. So if Harris is banking on the polls being 100% correct for her chances of winning, there are some potential problems and flaws in that scenario. For instance, a state like Pennsylvania, under 1% of the vote, what if Trump wins it, but everything else remains the same? That means Trump would win. I'm not saying it would happen. I'm just saying there's a little bit of a flaw here where there is an opening for Trump to win this race, even if Harris is leading in the polls, if the same polling errors happen again. So Harris, I think she would much rather be in the situation where she's polling nationally by 4 or 5 points. If Harris is polling 5 points nationally over Trump, the election's probably looking something like Georgia goes blue, Arizona goes blue, and even North Carolina can go blue if she's really up by 5. And this is what the map would look like. If the election is Trump plus 1, I think it's more likely the map looks like this, where Georgia's red, North Carolina's red, Arizona's red, Pennsylvania's red, Wisconsin's red, and Nevada is red. That's where I think the map looks more likely, and it's even possible Michigan could be red if the election is only Trump or only Harris plus 1. So while yes, it's good news that Harris is leading nationally over Trump, only 1 point in a CNN poll does potentially say that Harris might be in a little bit of trouble if those numbers start to become a trend and more than just one poll. If it's just one poll and we have a few more that come out that shows Harris up by 4 or 5, then there's really not too much to worry about nationally. But if this 1 point race is the beginning of a trend, then that's something Harris, I think, needs to start being concerned about. That will do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give it a like. And if you really liked it, please remember to click the subscribe button. And make sure you turn post notifications on so you always get notified when I post a new video. That way you never miss one. Also, please remember to share this video with your friends and family if you really like the video. And remember to stay tuned because I'll be posting at least one video every single day leading up until Election Day. So I'd really appreciate it if you keep coming back and watching those videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.